Ever since BioWare and Amazon confirmed that a Mass Effect TV show is in development, the reaction has been exactly what you would expect. Excitement, hope, cautious optimism, and a very healthy amount of skepticism. Because Mass Effect is not just another sci-fi property you can drag into television, slap a new coat of paint on, and hope the name does the heavy lifting. That might work for a franchise people casually recognize. It will not work for Mass Effect. This is not a series people remember because it had blue aliens, space armor, and a nice logo. People remember Mass Effect because of the Norman, the crew, the choices, the music, the politics, the impossible decisions, the feeling that the people standing beside you actually mattered. So yes, fans are nervous, and honestly, they should be. Because Mass Effect fans have already watched BioWare stumble. They have watched beloved franchises get adapted by people who seemed more interesting in using the name rather than understanding the thing itself. They have seen enough expensive shows prove that budget, branding, and familiar iconography are not the same as respect. The fear around this show is not irrational, it is earned. Halo is probably the easiest warning sign. Not because the show had no recognizable Halo elements. It had the armor, it had the ships, it had the names, it had the iconography, it had the budget. But for a lot of fans, that was not enough. Because an adaptation can keep the surface of a franchise and still miss the thing that made people care about it. That is the danger Mass Effect has to avoid. Not just looking like Mass Effect, not just naming the right species, locations, and organizations, not just giving us N7 armor, Turians, Asari, Krogan, mass relays, and a few lines about the Council. The show has to feel like it understands the soul of the game. Resident Evil shows that branding, monsters, labs, viruses, and familiar names are not enough if the adaptation still does not feel like the games people actually liked. The Rings of Power became for many viewers a reminder that a huge budget and a famous world do not automatically mean the spirit of the source material survived the trip. And then there are more divisive cases like The Last of Us, where the show clearly reached a broader audience, but parts of the original gaming audience still felt uneasy about casting, changes, and where the later seasons were drifting too far from what they valued in the games. Now, to be fair, there is one decision that I actually think is smart. From what we know, the Mass Effect show is not retelling Commander Shepard's story, and honestly, that is probably the right move. Because adapting Shepard directly would be walking into a minefield wearing tap dancing shoes. For many players, Shepard is not just a character. Shepard is their commander, their voice, their choices, their romances, their mistakes, their version of the galaxy. The moment a show says this is the official Shepard, it risks stepping on years of personal memory. Was Shepard male or female? Paragon or renegade? Who did they romance? Who survived? What choices defined them? Which ending happened? You can answer those questions for a television show, of course. But the more answers you give, the more player history you overwrite. So, an original story set in the Mass Effect universe is, at least on paper, a very sensible choice. It lets the show use the setting without trying to canonize one version of Shepard. It lets the writers explore the galaxy without turning the trilogy into a checklist. And it gives Mass Effect a chance to become television without immediately asking fans to surrender their commander at the nearest airlock. That does not mean the show will be good, but it does mean someone involved understands at least one important thing. Mass Effect is not just lore, it is ownership of experience. And if the show wants a chance, it has to respect that. Now, the original story approach is smart, but it also creates a different problem. Because if you are not retelling Shepard's story, then the show has to prove very quickly that it still understands Mass Effect. It cannot rely on Shepard carrying the emotional weight. It cannot rely on the Normandy crew doing all the heavy lifting. It cannot simply point at a mass relay, say, "Look, Mass Effect," and expect everyone to clap like trained pyjacks. The show needs its own reason to exist. And that is where the broader audience questions becomes dangerous. Because yes, of course a TV show needs to work for people who have never played the game. That part is normal. Fallout did that well. Arcane did that well. Good adaptations do not require homework before episode 1. But there is a difference between making something accessible and sanding it down until the original identity barely survives. Mass Effect should be understandable to new viewers, but it should not be embarrassed to be Mass Effect. It should not run away from the things that made the series distinct. Alien politics, moral pressure, military structure, crew loyalty, strange cultures, uncomfortable choices, and the quiet intimacy of living aboard a ship with people who may follow you into hell. That is the line the show has to walk. Accessible, yes. Generic, no. So, what does the show need to understand? It needs to understand that Mass Effect is not just humans and aliens in space. That is the surface. Mass Effect works because it combines scale with intimacy. On one side, you have galactic politics, ancient threats, alien civilizations, military command, impossible technology, and decisions that can affect entire species. But on the other side, you have the Normandy, a ship, a crew, quiet conversations between missions, people standing beside you because they choose to. That balance is the soul of Mass Effect. The galaxy has to feel enormous, but the people beside you have to feel close. If the show only understands the scale, it becomes generic space opera. If it only understands the crew, it risks becoming a character drama wearing Mass Effect clothes. It needs both. The council chambers and the cargo bay. The political argument and the late night conversation. The suicide mission and the small moment where someone trusts you enough to tell the truth. That is what Mass Effect does when it is at its best. It makes the galaxy feel vast, dangerous, and political. And then it makes one conversation with a companion feel like the thing that might decide whether you carry the weight of it. Now, to be fair, there are reasons not to dismiss this show immediately. From what we know so far, this series is being developed by Amazon MGM Studios in partnership with BioWare, and the show is expected to tell an original story set after the events of Mass Effect 3. That alone is interesting. Risky, yes, but interesting. Because a post-trilogy show gives the show room to explore a galaxy without directly retelling Shepard's journey. It can deal with the consequences of the original trilogy. It can introduce new characters. It can visit familiar species, factions, and conflict without forcing itself to recreate the exact player experience of the games. And importantly, Michael Gamble is involved as an executive producer. That does matter. Gamble has been a part of Mass Effect for a long time. And seeing someone so connected to the franchise involved in the adaptation is better than seeing the IP handed over to people who only know it as a brand with space armor and market recognition. But it is not enough for me to lower my guard completely, because involvement is not the same thing as control. A familiar name in the credit does not automatically mean the show understands the assignment. I would feel much better if more of the original BioWare creative DNA were visibly involved. People like Drew Karpyshyn, Casey Hudson, Parrish Lay, Preston Watamaniuk, and others who helped shape the series at its strongest. Not because a new story cannot work without every old name attached. It can. But because Mass Effect is a very specific kind of thing. It has tone, a rhythm, a moral pressure, a way of making politics, mythology, military command, friendship, romance, and loss all sit at the same table. And that is not something you want adapted by people who only understand the surface. And that is where I land with the Mass Effect TV show right now. Not hopeless, not convinced, interested, but guarded. Because Mass Effect absolutely can work as television. The universe is strong enough. The species are strong enough. The politics are strong enough. The source material has more than enough room for stories beyond Shepard. The First Contact War, mercenary stories, Citadel politics, post-trilogy consequences, frontier colonies, specters, Krogan conflicts, Turian military drama, Asari power games, Salarian intelligence work. There are so many angles that could work, but only if the people making it understand what they are holding. Mass Effect is not just a brand. It is not just blue aliens, space guns, military armor, and a famous logo. It is scale and intimacy. The galaxy has to feel enormous, but the people beside you have to feel close. That is the part the show has to protect. If Amazon and BioWare understand that, then yes, this could work. It could even become something special. But if they only keep the surface, the names, the visuals, the iconography, while losing the soul, then Mass Effect fans will know immediately. Because they have lived in this universe, they know what it feels like when the Normandy doors open. So, I am not writing this show off, but I am not lowering my guard either. The show has a chance. Now, it has to earn it.